Again, my name is Tom Solomon. I'm a principal planner at Grand River Transit. Joining me are our project consultants with Dillon Consulting, who will be presenting today. I will pass it off to their team so they can introduce themselves. Then Dillon will go over our agenda and carry on with the presentation. Sarah, off to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom, and welcome. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Zara Jaffer. I'm a planner and engagement specialist with Dillon Consulting. And with us as well as Dennis Carr. He's a partner and transit planning lead with Dillon, and he's also the consulting project team manager for the Township Transit Strategy. So you'll be hearing more from him in a couple of minutes as we get into the presentation. But just a quick overview of our agenda for today. Following the introductions, we'll have a presentation from Dennis on the project overview and the design of township transit services. And then we'll have some polling and questions to you in our audience on your thoughts on how transit service could be designed in Wellesley. Dennis will then share the overview of service delivery options, and we'll have a discussion on those. And we'll share a little bit more on the next steps for the project and have some time for your questions towards the end of the session as well. So as Tom mentioned, we have a couple of different ways for you to participate. You can send in your comments and questions using the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, or if you prefer to share over the microphone, we'll have a moment for you to be able to do that during the discussion portions where you can raise your hand and we'll take questions. You'll have the opportunity to unmute. So we look forward to hearing from you and having a meaningful dialogue, and please do continue to share your comments, even if you have had an opportunity potentially to already fill out the survey. We'd love to hear from you, and feel free to kind of share your comments and any questions that you have tonight. And so with that, Dennis, I'll hand it over to you to get us going.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate that and appreciate the introductions. So once again, my name is Dennis Carr. I am a partner and a transit planner at Dillon Consulting, and I'm here today just to talk to you a little bit about the project and some of the preliminary concepts that we've come up with. So if you go to the next slide, Zara. So every project starts with a vision, and basically this is what we're trying to get out of this study. So our project vision is to expand, enhance existing township transit services to effectively and efficiently meet the mobility needs of Waterloo Region's township residents. So that's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to identify, what does an appropriate or an effective transit service look like within each of the townships within the region. We go to the next slide. So how do we achieve this vision? 4 steps or 4 things or goals that we're trying to achieve. The first is to establish where the highest demand for public transit services exists. We're not going to put transit everywhere. We need to better understand where is that demand for public transit, where is that need, and help align what we plan and what we deliver based on that overall need, based on overall travel patterns. We want to understand the potential benefits of a transit service. So what is the benefit of transit within the township, and how do we best align the service to achieve that benefit for township residents, not just for both users, but also for the general community as well, and the benefits that transit provides. We want to take that information and then design a transit service for each of the townships and identify what that preliminary recommendation would look like. And then finally, develop an implementation plan. So if there is a recommendation to move forward with the transit service, how do we move forward with that implementation moving forward? Next slide. So we've started this project a number of months ago, and our first steps were to review background information, review policy information, overall travel demand, population growth, anything that would help us identify what the need for transit is. And then through that information, we started to develop some preliminary concept designs that we want to present to you today. We are in the first round of engagement right now, and that includes a couple of key steps. Interviewing stakeholders, this public open house, and open houses that we're conducting with each of the other townships within the region, as well as an online community survey that's currently out, and we encourage each of you to fill out to gather some of that really good information on values and travel demand and preferences. We're going to then take that information and kind of choose through our service options and develop a preferred service design and plan, which we'll then present to you in the second round of engagement before we take that feedback, finalize it, and present to Regional Council our recommendations. So that's the timeline. That's and where we're at right now and some of the next steps moving forward. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about township transit service options. So right now, there is no sort of conventional service that's open to all members of the community within the township right now. Kiwanis Transit provides a service for persons with disabilities and seniors, but it's not open to everybody. So why is transit important in any community? First of all, it helps address housing affordability concerns as well as the rising cost of living, right? And as things become more and more expensive, having an affordable mobility option is important. And if you can think about it, and it doesn't matter sort of what stage of life you're at, if you could have an affordable mobility option and maybe even reduce the need to take your kids to soccer practice, go to the grocery store, go to work, or as we age and we may lose our license, the ability to turn a 3-car household to a 2-car household, 2-car to 1-car, a 1-car to a 0-car, really improves our overall affordability and our ability to live within the community by providing that sustainable mobility option, whether you take it every day or you take it infrequently for individual trips. It provides access to hospitals, medical appointments, employment, training, education. So again, people who don't have access to automobiles or that automobile is used, or during inclement weather where I may not feel comfortable driving, provides options to participate in recreational activities and points of interest in the township. It addresses greater concerns over sustainability and protecting the natural environment by reducing single occupant vehicle use. Accommodates increase in people choosing not to own an automobile. So particularly with newer generations that desire not to own an automobile or delay getting their driver's license. And on busy roads, it helps address increased traffic congestion. So there's a lot of benefits that transit can provide, and that's one of the reasons we continue to look at it as an option for Wellesley Township. Next slide, please. But there are challenges in implementing transit services, particularly in sort of township areas that have a large rural area. Transit typically works best, in sort of more dense communities where, there's sort of a concentration of origins and destinations. In larger townships such as Wellesley, population tends to be low density, tends to be dispersed. There's no typical travel patterns. In many cases, there's limited pedestrian infrastructure to access bus stops. And many services and many amenities are sometimes located outside of townships. So it becomes a challenge to implement a transit service. But there's lots of transit service models that are fairly unique and are adaptable to those unique operating conditions. So a transit service does not always have to look like what it does in a more urban area. There are many different transit models that are better adapted for a larger, more rural area that we're going to discuss today that helps accommodate or address some of those challenges. Next slide. So this starts with a decision on what type of transit service we want to introduce. And the first decision that we have to make is around service area. So there's different types of models that we can introduce. One is a township-wide service. So we could look at a potential transit service that covers every corner of the township, from sort of the more urbanized area in Wellesley, in the community of Wellesley, to sort of the more rural parts of the township. So are we looking to provide any resident within the township a potential to access some sort of shared ride transit service? The next model we could look at is more of a township local service. So this, as an example here, this would be providing a service that's only within a more urbanized area of the township, such as the community of Wellesley. And finally, a third option that we could look at is more of an urban connector, which would be connecting some of the more urbanized areas where there's a bit of a cluster of individuals into a larger urban area in the region of Waterloo, so Kitchener, Cambridge, or Waterloo. So those are the three service area options that we're looking at when we're looking at developing a transit service plan for each of the townships. Next slide. We then look at different routing types. And there are three routing types that we typically look at: fixed route, on-demand, and flex route. Next slide. So fixed route transit service is probably the one most people are familiar with. And this is that typical traditional bus service that operates on a fixed route and a fixed schedule, and is typically best suited in sort of more urbanized areas of a community. So in this type of service model, you would walk to or roll to a bus stop in which and wait for that next vehicle to come, which is set on a fixed frequency or headway. And that route is pre-planned. It would take you to your destination or a transfer point where you transfer to the next route. These type of services are more suitable, again, for sort of more urbanized area that have a higher concentration of population, and not very well suited for very low density areas. Next slide. The next option that we looked at was the implementation of an on-demand service. So on-demand is a shared ride service that doesn't operate on a fixed route or schedule. Instead, it operates more dynamically. So as a customer, similar to what you may do with Kiwanis Transit, you would either call in or use a mobile app to request a ride. The system would then identify if a vehicle was available and what time that vehicle could pick you up. That vehicle would then take you to your destination, potentially picking up other passengers and dropping off other passengers along the way based on the other trip requests that have been made. So this is, again, a shared ride service. And this is typically better suited in lower density areas where the destinations are not as concentrated. People are traveling in many different areas from many different origin points. And so example of this type of service that's currently in place is in Breslau, which currently has that on-demand service that will connect members of that community within Breslau or to a fixed transfer point where they can take a fixed route and complete their trip into Waterloo, Kitchener, or Cambridge. Next slide. So this is just an example of how on-demand transit works. Again, you use your smartphone, or you can call in to request a ride and book a ride. Based on the ride that you select, you'd be identified a pickup point and a pickup time. A vehicle would come and pick you up at the identified place. You may pick up other passengers and drop off other passengers along the way before you get to your desired or requested destination within that zone, or at a transfer point where you can complete your trip on a fixed route. Next slide. Finally, we have a flex route, and a flex route is kind of like a hybrid between a fixed route and an on-demand service. So the core part of that route operates on a fixed route and schedule, typically along a major corridor through more urbanized areas. What that flex portion of the route does is allows a customer, upon request, to request the driver to flex off that route to get a little bit closer to their desired pickup point or their desired destination. It can't always accommodate this on every single trip. If the driver has some flexibility in their schedule and that request is made, that route will deviate off route to get you a little bit closer. So this flexing portion typically gets done in certain pockets of that municipality that don't get a lot of trip requests, that don't typically get people requesting a ride every single time that bus passes through. So if it's done infrequently, what that means is the bus doesn't need to have to pass through there if there's no trip request that's made. So an example of this would be the Route 77 in Wilmot that passes through New Hamburg. Next slide, please. The other thing to note is that when we're doing transit planning and designing transit service, it's all about trade-offs. and decisions that we need to make. And if you imagine that we have a certain resource, and let's say that resource is a driver or a vehicle, we need to make a decision how to best allocate that resource. So we may decide that we want to focus that resource on more of a settlement area, one of the more urbanized areas within the township, and offer a better level of service and focus that resource there. Or we may decide that it's more important to ensure everybody within the township has access to transit and extend that resource into the rural areas. That extends the geography of the area, which means a vehicle may not become as frequently because I'm extending the area in which that vehicle serves. So that's that example of trade-offs that we always have to make. And it's important to understand your values and what's important to you when we're deciding on those trade-offs. You go to the next slide, there's some other examples of trade-offs. We may look at, focusing on trips entirely within the township, or we may focus on connecting individuals from the township to Kitchener, Waterloo, or Cambridge, or more of the urban area. We may focus on extending hours and operating later or operating on weekends, or we may focus our resources on providing higher frequency service, but during a shorter period of time. And finally, we may look at keeping fares low and potentially having less service, or having higher fares and having more service. So these are, again, some examples of trade-offs and decisions that we make. In this next section, we want to talk a little bit about some of the preliminary options that we have been developing. And this is sort of that opportunity to get a little bit more feedback on those options and sort of see what works for you. And, at this point in time, what we've kind of started to consider is, what does the service design look like, right? So, we talked a little bit more about the different types of transit service, whether it's the on-demand transit or the fixed route or the flex route. What service area does it cover? And in this case, we're kind of looking at routing as well, and sort of where the major pickup points, where the major drop-off points. At this point, we're not getting into things like service hours, frequency, whether it operates on week evenings or weekends. That stuff that we still have to develop, and we always look forward to your feedback to see what are the most effective, or what are the, when would you like to see transit service in place? When would you use it? What are the major destinations, etc. So in this first option, there's sort of two pieces that we're going to present here. This first piece is looking at the potential for a fixed route service that are going to connect some of the more urbanized areas, or the sort of population clusters within Wellesley Township. So this route, you see, does a bit of a pickup within Wellesley, and it's an intercommunity route that connects to Waterloo and to the rest of the GRT network. And through there, it will connect and provide some pickup opportunities within Crosshill, within St. Clements, and within Heidelberg. So from there, we've got a couple of different options about where we go. So we've sort of identified some of the sort of major population centers within Wellesley and what that potential for a fixed route would look like. Option one would take you over to Conestoga Station with a potential connect to the Ion LRT. Whereas option two would take you further south into Boardwalk Station, which provides, again, a lot of connections to other GRT routes. So those are the two options that we had identified. What we'd like to hear today is some of your feedback on, what are your thoughts on this options? Do you have any sort of questions of clarity or understanding of what these options would look like and how they would work? And then once we have some of that discussion, we're going to get into another poll and allow you to sort of select which option you prefer. So before we get into the poll, maybe we'll just open it up to some questions. And once again, you can either use the Q&A or raise your hand and let us know if you have any questions about what these options look like.
Okay, well, the first thing that come to my mind would be the younger generation out here, the students that may have the need to get to the university district. I'm not sure if some of these options would connect to the university at some point. Is that possible? I mean, right now, if you live out in Wellesley, and you have a student living in your house, you pretty well need 3 cars. One for the student, one for each of the parents. If they have to get into the university to do their studies, then that becomes a bit of a problem. So how would one of these connect to the universities?
Sure, and I'll answer briefly, then maybe turn it over to Tom. But either of these options connect into a major transit terminal, with option 1 connecting into the Ion station, which provides sort of a whole host of connections that you can make to get to the university. And they're fairly frequent because it's such a major destination. And typically you would see fare integration as well. So you just transfer onto a fairly frequent route that would get you to one of the universities or to Conestoga College in a sense. So Tom, I'm not sure if you have anything else to elaborate on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So either option 1 or 2 would not be a direct connection to the university district, but there are connection points at Conestoga Station. You could take the Ion train straight to the University of Waterloo, or along Herbsville Road. There's a lot of connections that connect down Columbia Street or even down University area. So both options would have a transfer point to get to the university area.
Okay, well, that's a positive.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple of questions from the audience. So Dennis, maybe you could start us with this one. What would the travel time from one end to the other be for each option?
Yeah, that's something that we're still sort of working through right now. Tom, I'm not sure if you have any sort of clarity right now, but that's something that we're still working on.
Yeah, at this time, yeah, we don't have the exact times. It's something that we'd probably might have a little bit more information in the second session just to gauge a little bit. But at this time, we did not schedule these routes yet.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, what is the expected drive time to Boardwalk or the mall, which I think is similar to the first one. I'm not sure if that question is asking what the current drive time if you were driving a car, or if you're asking if what the trip time is. So the trip time isn't determined yet. But maybe Dennis, could you comment on what it is comparable in terms of if you were to drive versus if you were to get on a bus going to one of these destinations?
Yeah, so typically it's a bit longer when you're taking a vehicle, and that's because that vehicle needs to stop and pick up passengers along the way. And it may not be the most direct route because we're again trying to stop at various different urban areas to get you there. But we've tried to design the route to sort of put that balance between the number of stops that we have in place to minimize the amount of stop starts and the ability to pick up passengers, and to create the most direct route as possible, with the understanding that we want to connect to a number of the majority of sort of populated areas within the township to pick up as many passengers as possible and serve them.
Okay, thank you. We have another question. Will it fund itself or will taxes be raised?
So the answer to that question is we're not at that point where we're sort of we understand what the costs are. No transit services fund themselves, just like any service that's provided by a municipality, whether that's parks and recs centers or libraries. They are a service that's provided to the residents of a municipality for the benefit of the residents of the municipality. But we don't have any information on what that is going to cost as well and what the implications are for tax. Right now, we are just looking at what are the different service options, and that's something that we'll come to later on in the process. So we talked about sort of a potential fixed route model that connects more of the sort of the populated areas within the township. So the other thing that we are considering as well as we sort of move forward in this journey is the potential to use on-demand transit to connect the rest of the township and provide some form of transit service. So as you recall, the on-demand service is that vehicle does not operate on a fixed route or schedule. It's based on a request from passengers, and it's a shared ride service. So if I live somewhere else within the township and I need access to some sort of mobility service or shared ride mobility service, I have the ability to call up or use my smartphone and request a ride. And that ride will take me within the zone or to a connection point on that route I had just showed you. That would allow me to complete my trip using that fixed route. If, for example, I want to access the city of Waterloo or other parts of the GRT network. And so, yeah, that would be the extent of it. So we have proposed two zones, one in the sort of northwest part of Wellesley and also in West Woolwich. And here that on-demand west would introduce an on-demand zone west of Highway 85, connecting to this new Route 21, to Route 21, a fixed route service to Wellesley and St. Clements and other locations in Northwest Wellesley. The second zone would be North Wilmot and South Wellesley. So this would be an on-demand zone north of Highway 78, connecting to Route 77 in Wilmot, a fixed route service to Wellesley and St. Clements, and other locations in South Wellesley and North Wilmot. So those are the two sort of on-demand options that we're considering. So once again, I'd like to have a bit of discussion about what your thoughts are on this on-demand concept, or if you have any questions on how it would operate.
Great, thank you, Dennis. Okay, so we have a comment in the chat that there are larger employers in Hawkesville and Linwood. How could workers at those employers be able to use the transit system to get to and from work, whether they live inside the township or in the cities? And either Tom or Dennis, whoever would like to take that one, please do.
Yeah, I could take that one if you'd like. So the idea is in this on-demand zone on this map here, Zone 1, Linwood and Hawkesville are located in this area. And the idea is that the on-demand bus would service these communities and these large employers in Hawkesville and Linwood and would connect to either the fixed route in Wellesley or connect them to the fixed route 21 through Woolwich into Elmira and to the existing GRT network that way.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Hopefully that does answer the question. Please feel free to share any follow-ups if there are any. And another question, will there be options for someone without a cellular phone to access the on-demand service? So for example, children may not have a phone plan. So what are the other ways that a person could book a trip using the on-demand service?
Yeah, so you can book a trip using a landline. So there'll be a customer service center where you can call in and request a pickup point. And that agent on the other end of the line would identify to you when that vehicle is available to pick you up and where to go to be picked up for that vehicle.
We have a question. Has any thought been given to how transit would run in the wintertime? We are a rural area and blowing snow can be a significant issue. If a road crosses through multiple townships, road clearing is not consistent. Tom or Dennis, would you like to chime in there?
So currently with the existing GRT network, we have identified certain locations or certain stops that during inclement weather are not easily accessible. And we do have like winter zones where we might not be able to service during severe inclement weather. It doesn't happen often, but information is sent out on our website through Twitter and other social media feeds on that day of when we aren't able to accommodate those locations. It might be something that we might be able to implement in these rural areas, but something that we would take some feedback on and implement a policy for like the rural areas as well, if it's something that we can incorporate what we already have, or it has to be something different.
So as I said, we're currently in that first round of engagement. And speaking with you tonight, trying to get a better sense of your opinions with that online survey that's in place until August 2nd. We really, really encourage you, like if you haven't filled it out, fill it out. Tell your friends and neighbors to fill it out. We just want to get that diversity of perspectives on whether transit is suitable, what it should look like, what are the major travel patterns we need to address, what are your values, what's important to you as a community. And the more opinion, the more diversity of opinion we get, the better informed we are in developing a plan. So in the late summer, once that survey closes, we're going to take all of that information and everything we've collected and refine that plan. We'll come back in early fall with that second round of engagement and present the recommended strategy. And again, this is a recommended draft strategy because this is another opportunity to provide your feedback on whether this works, whether we need to make adjustments. And we're going to take that feedback and finalize that design in the late fall and present a set of recommendations to regional council. So that's the timeline, and that's where we're going with this strategy.
I just want to also share the links that are in the chat. You are free to use those to fill out the survey, to stay on top of the project and any additional progress, opportunities for engagement, and so forth will all be posted on there. So please do use that link and visit the page to subscribe for updates. And Tom, any other thoughts or comments that you wanted to share here with folks, recognizing that some may need to drop off as we're past 7 o'clock here?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I just wanted to echo what you said. Thank you everyone for participating today. We're grateful for your interest in township transit and value your feedback. If you haven't done so already, please fill out the township strategy survey. If you have any neighbors, friends in the township, please forward it off to them or tell them about it. Survey is open until Friday, August the 2nd. As mentioned, the link is right there for the survey. If you like to see other options for other townships, you can visit the website for the one from Wilmont we did yesterday. If you're interested in the other ones, we're doing Woolwich and North Dumfries next week. Information's also on the website, so if you're interested in those and see how they might connect to Wellesley. As far as staff contact, please contact Adam Fraser at adfraser@regionalwaterloo.ca. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to attend, but I wanted to thank Zara and Dennis as well for the presentation. And thank you again, and have a great evening, and put any questions in the chat if anybody has anything left.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. We have a question, Tom, that might be one for you. Will the service be canceled if it's not utilized? And I think this is a general question, not specific
Yeah.
to the fixed route or on demand. I guess your answer might vary depending on which one we're talking
Absolutely. Unfortunately, at this time, we can't comment on if it would be canceled or not. We do evaluate all routes once they've been implemented, give them a little bit of time to see how they work, and adjust when needed to see if things can be improved. From there, again, everything would just have to come down to if the community would like it or not, but at this time we can't comment if it would be canceled or not.
Okay, thank you for that. So I think we will happy to hang on the line for a little bit longer if anyone has any other comments or questions. And if you have to drop off, thank you so much for sharing part of your evening with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in the next round of engagement.